Okay. Wow, that's a hefty tome. This collects a ridiculous amount. There's something like 54 different issues in just this big, thick volume. So I'm gonna take off the edges, and we'll see sort of the undersection has a Weapon X version of Deadpool, and a nice cover that can't remember which issue number it is, but we'll get to it when we get to it. So now we're continuing on with issue 34, and this is without Joe Kelly. This is with a guy named Christopher Priest, and he ended up writing Deadpool for a little over a year. So he does do kind of a fresh start. Deadpool goes to a trailer park and is trying to get a place to stay. He ends up staying at a place with a bunch of other sort of misfit superheroes. And this is kind of I'm not sure if it's a flashback or a flash forward, but within the flashback, we have yet another flashback. And we find out that right now, Deadpool is currently floating in a giant tube. So it must mean that there's a villain, because only villains keep people floating in giant tubes. But he's there. He finds out that his body is made of jelly. This mysterious scientist is working on him, not really telling him who he is. His body is too damaged to work, so in the midst of their conversation, Deadpool begins yet another flashback. So we see him doing some of his early Merc work. And to be honest, I kind of love both this issue and the next one, because it's like nice little short stories broken up to the main plot going on in the background or in the flash forward. He worked for Kingpin for a while, doing some dirty work. Bullseye, that was probably one of the first few times they would have met. He keeps stealing jobs from Deadpool, and it's kind of a back and forth of them trying to work. But it's revealed at the end that it's not just Deadpool that's been turned into snot, but Death. So she's trapped in one of the vats too. So that's the little plot twist at the end of the first one. And then he's trying to find if there's a way out. He's trying to ask this guy for more information, like who is this scientist that's working on them. But scientist just says, you know what, tell me more flashbacks. And we just get into more fun stories of him supposed to kill a nun, and times when he he had to play the Hobgoblin. That's Deadpool as the Hobgoblin, just so that he needs to go one place, Hobgoblin needs to be somewhere else. So he blew up the wrong place, and he sucks at being a villain too. But yeah, he was taking on another job where I think they're trying to kill the Thing. Yeah, he was asked to do that. I think he obviously doesn't end up doing it, but it was a fun little issue. And at the very end, we see that Deadpool has snuck out of the tube, and he's about to give it to the scientist guy. By the way, this cover, nothing to do with the following issue. Not a thing. Someone just drew it and was like, yep, that's the cover for issue 38. I love how quickly the plot just seems to move along, even though, like, I don't know, there's something better and more enjoyable about the read where you're kind of following one storyline, even if it has these flashbacks, but you don't really have to focus on too much. So obviously he's still made of snot, because he can't do anything to this guy, because his hand just comes right apart. But so he has to he gets put back and told, why don't you tell me what happened with the rest of Bullseye? And he continues some of the story, and it's just another fun issue of wacky stuff happening. And I think Kingpin fired him because he refused to kill Bullseye. The scientist asked him to tell about his childhood, and he talks about getting in a fight then. But eventually he's given a suit that will give him some of his powers back, and he immediately turns on the Doctor and punches him, grabs Death, and starts trying to escape. But as he's escaping, he of course has another flashback, because that's the running theme of these 3 issues. And what we see right here is something that becomes kind of iconic for Deadpool, which is him sitting on the couch in his underwear without any of his costume on, watching TV, usually flipping the channels. We're going to see that in Cable Deadpool. We're going to see that in the Daniel Way version. But I don't know. This is probably the first. I think this is the first panel where we see Deadpool sitting on the couch, staring at a TV, hanger antenna. Awesome stuff. But yeah, so a little bit more of a flashback, and then we go to the beginning to find out that the person that was kidnapping him, that scientist, was actually Loki. And he ends the issue with saying, "I am thy father." Dun, dun, dun. So then the next issue is, I think it's, the art is done by someone entirely different. And, yeah, I kind of like that style, where if you look at sort of the floors, where they do stuff like that, and just kind of like the little scratchings that you see. It reminds me of an artist named Petar Kowalski, who's currently doing Bloodborne, and he just kind of has that style when he draws like open areas like that. And I don't know, I really like it. But in this whole issue, what we have is Deadpool is going to become a son of Loki, and considered worthy of holding Thor's hammer, which he shouldn't be. But somehow, and I don't know if it's ever really explained, he's sent to Earth, and he actually is able to lift Thor's hammer, and is flying around as kind of Deadpool Thor, and he starts talking like him with save, but maketh thou any grey poupon? And it's just this great issue where Deadpool is Thor, and Thor is pissed off trying to get his powers back, and he's chasing him down. And Loki's telling him a bit more about what's going on. This is one of the first, perhaps, origins. I'm not sure exactly where in the issue it is, but one of the first origins of Deadpool's fourth wall breaking, because Loki starts telling him, consider that none of this is real, and there's just a man at a typewriter. And it's sort of a phrase that Deadpool starts repeating over and over throughout, I think, almost the rest of this run. And it's kind of like this weird little inside joke, but it's kind of a nod to the fact that, yeah, it's clear it's a comic book, and Deadpool's kind of self-aware that he's a fictional character. It ends with Loki giving him a horrible curse of making his face pretty, which leads to this lovely cover. Hi, Papa. So Deadpool is now cursed with looking like Tom Cruise. And so and it starts off with he's in the middle of nowhere fighting off some Saudi Arabians. Even one of them says, "Aren't you Tom Cruise?" And so it becomes this kind of fun running gag. He gets like a job, like offered work in movies, goes to a theater, people think he's Tom Cruise. It's kind of a fun little thing. He tries to go to Hell House, and I don't know if you remember from second last issue or the third last of Joe Kelly's run or something like that. Hell House is no longer run by the same guy, and it's other people there, and it's not as fun, and it's sad. But he's trying on different costumes, and he starts checking out, his costumes at the cleaners. He checks out this apartment building, and he finds out he's going to have to share it with this lovely couple, Frank and Mary, or Skeever, as some people call her. Skeeter, sorry, is her name. Or Tatiana. She has like 10 names. And when I say 10, I mean 4. So the next issue is Deadpool and his 2 roommates, Frank and Skeever, or Skeeter. Frank is, I don't I don't think it even says it, but I think that's Constrictor, right? Well, whatever. So they, of course, whenever he meets someone, he's got to fight him. So he looks like Tom Cruise wearing Wolverine's pants and Spider-Man's shirt, because his are still at the cleaner for 2 weeks. But eventually they get along, and they're having tea together. He still doesn't trust them. Yeah, so, like, her name's also Titiana. Like, it's an interesting thing. So, yeah, he still doesn't trust them, but whatever, they have to work together. He ends up taking a job from Taskmaster, of all people. Extra, so he's just filling his life with people he shouldn't trust. And eventually he's asked to do this mission, and this mission's going to involve 4 of them, not just him. 4 of them have to go steal something from a spaceship. So we're at issue 40, and it's literally Deadpool in space. I love this run so much. Like, no offense to Joe Kelly, I know it's a classic or whatever, but I love the we can do whatever the hell we want kind of style that Deadpool kind of starts going in after that. And so yeah, it turns out that, of course, Frank and Mary are plotting against getting Deadpool. Meanwhile, he doesn't trust his crew. He thinks they're set up to backstab him at some point, and he's right. And there's constant plot twists throughout this entire issue, where he's constantly finding out, like, a different person is backstabbing him, and he's trying to backstab another person. Meanwhile, they're plotting against him back on Earth. So he's fighting. And, like, even when he escapes, like, that was all still part of the backstab plan, and he's trapped out in an escape pod in the middle of space at the end of it. What's going to happen next? Well, of course, he's got to get kidnapped by aliens, because what else? It's just non-stop ridiculous awesomeness. So, gets kidnapped by some aliens. They'll agree to send him home if he goes on, of course, yet another mission for them. And I just love it. It's so he sneaks into this place. He's trying to save this guy named Dirty Wolf, and he finds him at the end of the issue, and then has to fight off all of these guys, just him and Wolf. But he's probably going to just kind of run away and make Wolf do most of the fighting, because Deadpool's, let's face it, kind of a jerk. But before we continue on with that story, the next issue is, for no reason, they're talking about this, and they just have a flashback. It's just a nice flashback issue before we get back to what's going on in space. And this is a really special issue, because something happens at the very beginning. Deadpool has this screamer guy, I forget his name already, but he makes Deadpool go deaf. And deaf and incapable of speech. So it's actually a well-written entire issue, or not the entire issue, where there's no speaking whatsoever. And these are actually not easy to read. It's not half the work. This is them really, and him trying to figure this out and figure out how to stop and get his hearing back, and to stop this guy. But there's some great funny things where he can't see the chalkboard, and he thinks someone's trying to kill him. Like, there's just great misunderstandings, and it's really funny. And eventually he gets his hearing back. But it was just a great little, like, randomly inserted issue to throw there. Just a flashback until we get back to him stuck in space. And again, just like every issue of this whole run, like, I never got bored, really. The Menaced Phantom, where it's this back and forth between him and that wolf guy, isn't it? Yeah. No. Absorber Man, but that's Wolf's enemy. But I think they won't leave. Wolf won't leave with him until he gets his motorcycle. So Deadpool like saves his motorcycle, but he kind of didn't realize Wolf wasn't on the cycle behind him, and now he's just kind of escaped. And now that dirty Wolf guy's probably gonna be really mad at him. Um, he gets back to Earth, these two people that Frank and Mary that are plotting against him, and but he had some kind of contingency plan with this guy right here. Dun dun dun. So this issue is almost way more from the perspective of Black Panther, and it's kind of a two-parter. So Deadpool was actually tasked with by Archibay. I'm not sure how his name's pronounced, but he was tasked with stealing Black Panther's giant leopard. So he's off on that, and I believe he throws something on Tatiana that he'll give them the cure after Deadpool has finished his task, and he won't tell them what's going to happen to Tatiana, Mary, Skeever, whatever, 5 different names, and she'll have another one coming up soon. But so yeah, Black Panther's having some fun, and Deadpool shows up. He still looks like Tom Cruise. Yes, he still looks like Tom Cruise at this point. It hasn't gotten rid of Loki's curse. But he comes to steal the leopard. There's, of course, a big fight because other people, Black Panther is currently engaged with fighting, and all-out brawls, blah, blah, blah. He does steal the leopard, I believe, and teleports it back to Archibay. And then the story is actually continued in an issue of Black Panther. This was actually only issue 23 of Black Panther, so it was just closing in on its second year. And that was around 1999. So it had started around, I guess, the same time Deadpool probably did, or maybe a little bit later. So it cuts to, this prison-like thing of Frank, Mary, and Deadpool, who looks like, hey, aren't you Tom Cruise? In prison. And, of course, a lot more of it is from, just because it's Black Panther, a lot more of it's from Black Panther's perspective. So he's working with the Avengers in this issue, and he just doesn't trust them. So they're all in captivity. Deadpool just teleports out, because screw it, why bother? I don't really... This was maybe the one section that I didn't care as much about, because clearly there were other storylines that were already going on in Black Panther at the time, and there's a whole thing going on with the one guy whose name I can't remember, Triathlon. There's some whole storyline where he's wandering off and some mysterious stranger is speaking to him that seems to know him, but we don't ever find out who he's actually talking to, because that's not continued in this story. So it was okay, but I felt very out of the loop reading it. But eventually it all comes to a head, and we, at long last, Tatiana's shocking secret. There was a running joke for the past 2 or 3 issues that Constrictor was saying, I think her secret is she's a man. She's secretly a man. Be honest. We know something's up with you. So we have one more flashback to the trailer park. I knew you'd be back. And it's kind of fitting because this issue is actually the last one that Christopher Priest did. So it's kind of fitting that he has this, very cyclical beginning to, first issue, last issue. And that happens again with quite a few other writers who wrote for Deadpool. But, yeah, so we figure out a little bit more of what's going on. But, I can't even remember. sorry about this. They're still trapped in there. I didn't realize it was at that point. Eventually, she gets out because, surprise, surprise, she's Copycat. And, Vanessa, Blue Vanessa. We haven't actually seen her since the Circle Chase? Yeah. So he heads back to the apartment. He tells her he knew the whole time, but he just wanted to let her play it out and all that stuff. And yeah, he gives the account, scrapes in her face because she still owed money for a job that he took that she got for him. But yeah, it ends. It ends with him talking to someone in a bar, and when he starts walking away, people are freaking out at him, and it's because he no longer looks like Tom Cruise. And Loki had said to him, once you know your true father, only then will the curse be removed. So that stranger that he met in the bar was his dad, and he runs back, and sadly, he is already gone. And yeah, and then he's like, nice little splash shot of "I'm back, baby," and that is how the Christopher Priest run ends. So this run ran for quite a bit. It's like all the way from there to there. 12 issues of Deadpool, 1 issue of Black Panther to kind of tell those couple story arcs. And I liked it. Deadpool went to space for 4 issues. There was all these funny flashbacks within a flashback. There was tons of funny running jokes, and some of the fourth wall breaking that we come to expect from the Deadpool we know now. The Deadpool sort of in more recent times is the one I feel to a certain extent is a more perfected one. Not necessarily better comics, just a more perfected telling of the character. And I think I really started seeing how much I loved this sort of second half of the original run. Sadly, yeah, a bit more than I liked the Joe Kelly run. But he, someone set the stone there, and someone was building off of the stone. So credit where credit is due, of course. I don't even know what I mean by that. I give it a yeah out of Thank you for watching, and as always, stay cuddly.